All right. It is Wednesday, December 14th. Is the beginning of the holidays. Happy holidays, happy Hanukkah, happy Christmas coming up. We do have one more show next week on the 21st. It's been a phenomenal year. It's coming to an end. We have a great guest today, but before we get going with what's going on in the world of Samsung, let's listen to our own John Sibley Butler.
I was 8 years old and running with a dime in my hand into the drugstore to buy a paper for my old man. I would sit on his lap in that big old Buick and steer as we drove through town. He would shuffle my hair and say, son, take a good look around at your hometown, at your hometown, your hometown, at your hometown.
Bravo.
Excellent, excellent, Johnny.
Thank you very much.
How are you doing today?
Well, I am doing absolutely fine. A wonderful day. I listened to a great program this morning with my co-host here. It was fabulous. And we have a great day in Austin, Texas. And I've been really following the new technology and energy. I'm sure you have too, where the fusion works, right? By pressing hydrogen atoms with each other and forcing that into helium, and then you can create all kind of energy. So I thought that was a great technology if we follow the energy stuff. And we have a new mayor in Austin, Texas, a good friend of mine, Kirk Watson. It looks like he won last night. And the big thing in the world, when we look around the different business models, you can really see it's different than when the winter is coming. You know, Andreas, it's very, very different. We all expect winter, even when I was in Snowland at Northwestern in graduate school. But it's like a hurricane is coming when it relates to electricity. This is the first time where I've heard so much about the movement of winter and perhaps the whole idea that we would not have enough electricity. I find that absolutely amazing. On the good side, the stock market was up, so things are going good here in the great state of Texas. Great day to play golf. And we're just looking forward to not having a blackout in the wintertime.
That's right. Those are good thoughts, good thoughts. Llewellyn King, how are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you. And I'm in a state of adulation and happiness because Dr. Butler watched my program and liked it. It was the broadcast I do once a month for United States Energy Association. But to have so eminent a figure as Dr. Johnny Butler watching and actually approving just leaves me speechless. So I won't be saying anything more for the rest of the program. You do it.
Don't push it.
I am very well, and I look at the world with always, and I see the same two things. It's always the best of times and the worst of times. If you're living in downtown Kiev, it ain't too great. If you're living in downtown Providence, Rhode Island, it's pretty nice. And I assume it's nice in Texas, but you probably won't have enough power to go through the winter. That would appear to be the case. I too am excited by the technological breakthrough of gain in inertial fusion. And if you bear with me, I've been following fusion for a very long time, and it's always having breakthroughs. There used to be a time when Yale University used to announce a breakthrough almost routinely every 6 months. But of course, they never got what's called gain, where you get more energy out. It's in a fraction of a nanosecond, but more energy out than you put in. And that's real progress. But like all new scientific discoveries, you listening, Johnny? Like all new scientific discoveries, it's oversold. They're all oversold initially. I have been through superconducting. I've been through cold fusion. I've been through various kinds of fusion, and people have been very attracted to it. There was one poor devil called Skip, and what was his name now? It doesn't matter. But he died actually testifying before Congress trying to get more money, and he was going to do it with off-the-shelf optical lasers, which of course you couldn't. I was once, and this is a story against myself, Johnny, you'll enjoy it. It's against me. And that is, I was watching an inertial fusion experiment at Lawrence Livermore back in the early 80s. And at that time, they were using accelerators, which were about the size of a very large car. And there were 8 of them, all directed at this tiny, tiny, half the size of a pea target. And I was talking to the technician who said they needed bigger machines. They needed them the size of locomotives. Now they had, I think, 192 lasers directed at the same target, essentially. But he said, you know, you've got to come over here and see this thing. I've got a way of communicating with people all over the world. And I said, oh, that's souped up telex. Let's concentrate. I missed the big story. I missed the internet, which was bigger than these big machines hitting a little pellet. So these things do happen. I see by the absolute satisfaction on Dr. Butler's face that that this is hit home satisfactorily. But anyway, fusion has been the apple of science's eye, if you will, for a very long time. The promise of infinite electricity without pollution is a long, long, long way away, and it may never happen. There are 2 systems. One is inertial, the one that worked, the one that I described in the early days. The other one is the tokamak. It's a Russian word. It's a circular device which holds a plasma because it's too hot to be anything but a plasma. When things get beyond melting, beyond gasification, they reach a plasma state to get the temperature and better than you have in the sun, and to try to fuse these 2 atoms together in that. And that probably will be the basis of the ultimate reactor, but they haven't proved substantial gain yet. And these 2 are in a race, but this is like a race between a sloth and a turtle. This is not a fast race, you know. This is like 2 academics. It's not a serious contest. Eventually we will get fusion. Whether it will actually be suitable for electricity production, we don't know. Along the way, there have been some fascinating efforts. The founder of Penthouse, Bob Guccione, spent his own fortune trying to achieve fusion. He was a huge supporter, and he poured all that money he made out of naked women into fusion. It has a complex history. And I just suggest that to you, and it's I'm not sure that we're going to see it. When cold fusion, which was 2 notable scientists from Britain came along, they tried it at all the national labs, and the director of the Sandia National Laboratory at the time said to me, after many, many attempts to replicate this alleged achievement, he said to me, do you think the erection on cold fusion has gone down yet? Went down. And we shall see about these other forms of fusion. It's wonderful science. It's not a new source of electricity, or for that matter, of defense. It may have some use in nuclear weapons design, because the temperatures inside a nuclear blast are equivalent to the temperatures you need to fuse hydrogen atoms together. Sorry, that was a bit long-winded, but it saves Johnny. He has nothing to say.
Boy, he's tough on me today. That was excellent. That was I might pay you some tuition for that, Professor. That was excellent.
All right. Let me say hello to David Flanary. David, how are you, sir?
Hello. I'm looking forward to join the spirited conversation.
Absolutely. For those listening, David is the senior market leader for Texas in the Samsung mobile enterprise business. out of the Samsung Electronics Americas. Samsung is a very, very large company, some 100+ billions. I forget how large it is. He's going
12th
to be
largest company on the planet by revenue.
Okay. He's going
Like
to
the last data point I saw.
He's going to be with us for the hour, and we're looking forward to the conversation. Prior to Samsung, David was strategic initiatives consultant at Broadsoft, a managing partner at Digital Wire, and an EVP at Point One. David holds a BA in communications and business from St. Edward's University, also known as the Notre Dame of the South.
That's very true.
That's right. So welcome, David. And tell us real quick, what is Samsung up to in Texas? What's going on? How do you guys are looking at 2023 coming over? Post-COVID, post-worldwide crisis, post-Ukrainian war. I mean, what does 2023 look like? Is it a flat year? Is it a bad year? Is it a good year? What's going on in Texas for Samsung?
Well, there's lots going on in Texas with Samsung. Samsung has a wide variety of P&Ls. I'm part of the mobility P&L. Many Texans and probably many people across the country at this point are aware of Samsung's massive deployments in their semiconductor business. We are currently opening a $19 billion fab in Taylor, Texas, which is just northeast of Austin. We have currently a fab in Austin that's been operating for some time now, and long-range planning discussions, purely discussions, of another $192 billion and another 9 plants that is possible to come to the marketplace. So semiconductor business is very busy. The CHIP Act, and there's lots of things that are driving continued growth, driving continued efforts into the state. Governor Abbott and the governorship, the lieutenants around him have been pretty pro-business, and Samsung has seemed to engage and be pretty glad to be here. So anyway, that's what they're up to. I'm part of the mobility business. We're based in Plano. We are watches, we're phones, we're tablets, we're PCs, we're Chromebooks. So we're a segment. I laugh with some of my compadres that are also sell into some of the particular sectors, and I'm the small screens, and those folks are the big screens, the big LEDs, the big interactive boards, the big monitors, et cetera. So anyway, we make lots and lots and lots of devices, and we're trying to figure out how to continue to make them and make them more efficiently and be a good steward for the city and in the state.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Well, David, let me congratulate you on Samsung. I am a Samsung Note user. I have decided to throw out the $2,100 for the Samsung Fold 4.
Nice.
And this is my question.
Yes,
As
sir.
we move around, seriously, I do everything on my Note. I'm a little disappointed that you didn't put the pen in the phone, but I do everything on my Note. But as we move through the Internet of Things, and you just divided up the company into big screens and small screens. But what we know, what's evolving is that small screens can become big screens.
Yes, sir.
So my question is, in the content of your company, which is really awesome, I think, how do you look at the competition between large screens and small screens? And I say this because of this. I think that when I purchase my Samsung Fold, that I won't need a big screen anymore in my life. So how do you look at the future of production, and do you expect the small screens that folds into large screens to really take over in the next 10 to 15 years?
Yes, sir. It's a great question. And the simple answer to that question is they cooperate. The screens interoperate, they cooperate. You end up with a net 1 + 1 = 3 when you talk about a small screen, or let's define it a little better, a handheld screen versus something that may be mounted or maybe a much larger screen.
For TV and
I think
watching.
the right answer is in combination, sir. And so one, you use one to leverage the other. You use them both independently, or you use them to emphasize a point. There are lots of business examples. There are lots of educational examples. There are lots of scenarios where the next gen tech, the disruptive technology that's coming along, quite often software generated, but coupled with hardware, now allows for a teacher to have an interactive board and have little Johnny and little Susie on that board, and they're working their long division problem to see who gets to the bottom faster. But oh, by the way, with the internet, with 5G, with some of these other things, little Bobby can be in Nebraska, and little Susie can be in Austin, Texas. So there are all kinds of different scenarios. You take the geography out of the equation in any size screen, and you couple the screens together to complement themselves.
Well, let me follow that with another question.
Yes, sir.
I also think that it's interesting that telephones are now being marketed as cameras rather than phones. But I also find it interesting that the Samsung Note is not marketed as a business machine.
I'm sorry, it's not what?
As a business, it's not marketed
as a B2B device. Yes, sir.
In other words, you can do everything there. You don't need anything. It's a full office, everything from Excel and etc. So my question is, why is the camera so important now rather than the telephone? And then my next question is, what's the competition? Is BlackBerry coming back in terms of the keyboard? If you have, they have the patents on the keyboards. So how, because all the litigation now, it's Samsung and the other products, it's about, okay, if you put a keyboard on physical, we're coming after you. So how is that planning out as you plan the 21st century?
So answering them in reverse order, I am not familiar with who owns the actual patents for the actual keyboard on the phone. Okay. Samsung did acquire a wide variety, a portfolio of patents from BlackBerry, but I'm not specific to that particular that scenario. I'm unfamiliar. Typically, what people have seen, what I've seen, what's been publicized to some degree, is the broadcast of an image of a full keyboard that may be coming out of your phone. So think of your phone set in a situation so that it may be up and it is beaming out a keyboard that's a much closer to a real keyboard size.
Yeah, I have seen that. A virtual keyboard. I have seen that.
Yes, sir. Virtual keyboards, AR, VR, all of these things. I don't know. I'm not super familiar with it either, because this is a B2C environment. I'm part of the B2B practice at Samsung, but in the B2C environment, there are VR scenarios, there are AR scenarios that actually use some of our phones, and they're basically snap-on devices to our phones, and it creates some segment, some element. The phone in many cases is the screen, and you snap on what do you call it? Something to protect your eyes, and it darkens the room, so to speak. So there's lots of scenarios here with AR, VR with the phones. Your original question. Fundamentally, though, I think the form factor of phones continues to run. The cameras have become more important. My honest opinion is that's more of a B2C issue rather than a B2B one. We have scanning solutions and a variety of solutions in the B2B environment with Samsung phones, but none of them need the 100 megapixel cameras and like all these crazy environments. I was sitting in a gymnasium, perfect example last night. It was my son's 6th grade band. It was their first band recital. And we happened to be on the opposite side of the gymnasium. He was over on the clarinets, literally on the other side of the gym. And my wife was jumping up and trying to run down and try to get pictures as close as she can. And I said, well, you don't need to do that. This S22 Ultra has 100 megapixel zoom that allows you to essentially sit from my seat and zoom into him and watch the whole thing. We can see his fingers move, the whole thing. I was, 300, 400 feet from him.
Yeah, very
So
impressive.
like,
I have a million questions. I'm going to let my distinguished colleague from the Northeast come in so he doesn't feel bad.
So you're very kind. And meanwhile, you can think up that question. I have a question. How does a company the size of Samsung manage itself? It's a Asian roots, it's very large, and generally when
Very large.
companies get very large, they get moribund. They lose flexibility. We have some exceptions where single individuals, but it's not true as far as I know, Samsung. Rupert Murdoch comes to mind, Elon Musk, where the individual sets the tone, the pace, and how aggressive a company might be. But if you go to what I call the Peter Drucker model, which is management, you end up with often being muscle bound and unable to make a decision or unable to overcome inertia if the wrong decision has been made. How is management handled in Samsung? How do you overcome the problems of being large and successful?
Sure. So it's a great question. I think I would simply say no one's perfect. We've had our challenges and we've had our successes, to be sure. In Samsung's particular, so in Samsung, in mobility and in B2B, because formally, technically, that's where I sit. So I can speak from that reference point. The North American organization is handed metrics, we're handed effectively SKUs, devices, you know, a roadmap of these are what's coming in the next few years. Begin to position Suwon, which is our part of our corporate leadership in South Korea, suggests and drives some of the business models and some of the business metrics. But we have a fair amount of autonomy if we find something that makes sense in our marketplace, that makes sense here, that may not make sense somewhere else, to begin to adapt and turn the ship as needed in order to capture markets that are just relevant to our geography. So we do have a fair amount of flexibility. I would say there are lines that are drawn for us, but we have the ability to get in and out of those lines, certainly with business justification, some successes and some roadmap. We do a lot of business cases. We study a lot of business cases and opportunities that we can take a shining success and then multiply it across another footprint, across another target audience that may make sense for that particular solution. So it's one of the common practices.
How do you accommodate the brilliant idea of the individual? We don't see much of that from large companies. Their modus operandi tends to be to buy that individual as soon as there's some market success, and often to ignore the property they've bought and damage it and not allow it to grow to its full size and strength. I understand in Silicon Valley now, entrepreneurs look to a new startup, to when it will be sold and who will buy it, assuming it'll be bought by Google if the Justice Department allows it, etc.
Yes, sir.
Very different from when Bill Gates and companies started, Microsoft, and even when the other big tech companies got going. And yet old tech didn't do well in this environment. Look at IBM. It's still going, but it's a shadow of the innovator it once was, and it's got a much smaller place in the market.
Yes, sir. No, it's a very good question. There are a couple different ways. Global corporate pushes down opportunities. We're every month at least, we're given opportunities to join into essentially communities that are bring new ideas to the table, bring a new concept, bring a new feature functionality, and it elevates all the way up to anyone at different levels. We have access to these different communities, and you can immediately provide a solution that will hit engineering or you know, one of the groups in Korea that's, hey, this may be a really good idea. That's one example. That's the kind of top-down model. The bottom-up model, which I guess you're probably asking about both. You know, let's be honest. It's a little bit of elbow grease. It requires the employee to be motivated, to want to drive your company to success, and to say, hey, Mr. Product Manager person, Mr. Sales Engineer, Mr. whoever it may be, whatever the idea wherever the idea rides, I have something for you. I'm going to email you this paragraph or this schematic or this whatever. I think you should look at it. My experience with the mobility group in North America, they've been very open, and I can run up the product channel. I can run up the engineering channel. I can run up the solutions architecture groups. There's a wide variety of groups that are certainly willing to listen. And then lastly, your management, your direct management. If your direct management isn't quite as motivated as ensuring that we're going to succeed tomorrow better than we did today, it may be a little bit harder. My personal situation, I have an absolutely wonderful boss that I report to, and she agrees with me wholeheartedly that if there is an idea, a concept that's going to make a difference, we need to get it to the top of the stack as soon as possible. So I'm blessed with being under the right folks and high enough up that I can get the message out pretty quickly.
Thank you.
Yes, and let me just ask this, as a fast moving, your technology moves fast, right? So you have to have an open innovation, open to new ideas. And I think that Samsung is probably leading right there with iPhone in terms of the sales across the country. As a company where you have so much technology, it is moving so fast. Okay, well, a telephone would be in my skin, whether or not a telephone would be on my watch. Well, I think I do have a telephone on my watch.
Yes, sir. Those are out there already.
What's the processes that you go through for the competitive process in an industry that can change overnight? That is, like the BlackBerry was done overnight because of their managerial decisions. And we have lots of Sears and Roebuck was done overnight because of their managerial decisions. So what's the open innovation process, following up on Llewellyn's concept, that keeps the company above the competition, because it is fast moving, the technology moves so fast?
Yes, sir. That's a great question. And there are lots of correct answers to it. In Samsung's case in particular, I think it's pretty well publicized at this point that the folds and what we talked about at the very beginning, let's get a bigger screen in my handheld device and double it. If you flip it out, there's even some new screens I saw that were CES that you actually can expand out, that some of these OLED screens and some of these things now that are flexible, that you can actually expand out your screen. There are all these different concepts and ideas and opportunities to further the handheld device and to make it something bigger, stronger, faster, more capable. One of the solutions that Samsung Mobility has been driving and really is just beginning to scratch the surface on it. It's called DeX. Like, this is not something shocking to anyone on this in this panel. And quite honestly, the technology isn't remarkable disruptive tech, but what's happened is the stagnation of huge sectors, police, fire, ambulance. I'm primarily in the government sector, so I'll speak more towards the government opportunities. But you talk about your Department of Transportation and the thousands and thousands of people that are on the street. Well, in a typical police car, you used to have a tough book, a laptop. It's big, it's heavy, it's takes up a lot of room. You got a monitor, you got a keyboard, you got all this stuff in your car. All of a sudden, you don't have very much room for the people. Well, DeX, which is a desktop experience, is essentially what it stands for. Your phone is now your laptop in your car. And oh, by the way, you have a dummy keyboard and a dummy monitor, but now you've taken the footprint in the vehicle and really shrunk it down, on top of the fact that you unplug the phone, you go into your desk in the precinct, wherever it may be, drop it in the cradle, you've got another keyboard and monitor there, and all your reports that you were doing in your car all day long, well, they're already there. Submit them, you're done, you're out of here. We just saved you an hour and a half of time having to rewrite your reports or write them again in a more organized fashion when you're sitting at your desk. So there's all kinds of opportunities to take this little handheld device and turn it into something that's creating value. It's creating, from my standpoint, we talk about value proposition, you talk about disruptive technology and creating something that matters. Save me time, make me time. Save me money, make me money. If you can get a yes on 1+ of any one of those, almost every time your potential target consumer is willing to listen. And you put 2 or 3 or 4 of those together, and how quickly can you get out here and tell me about it? And I find that over and over and over and over again.
David,
Thank you.
sorry.
Of course.
The other thing that I would add to all that is on the discussion is that, having worked for some large companies, is that once a company gets into a market, and a market has a cadence, like a new phone every 12 months, a new this every 18 months. So that dictates the cadence of the market, dictates the pace of the innovation, right? So Samsung is into all this amazing markets of mobile phones and smartphones and tablets and watches and the Galaxy Buds, and makes the earpieces and all these accessories and the TVs and the appliances, and it makes the kitchen equipment and laundry equipment and vacuum equipment and computers and displays and smart things, connected things. So all those markets have a cadence, right? And so Samsung is kind of committed to being part of that, and for the most part, you all know that Samsung, it's first to market in just about everything they make. So they're an amazing company.
Yes, sir. That's critical to the Lee family that actually is the majority owner of Samsung. Samsung is largely privately held. There are some elements that have some public assets associated with, but effectively it's a privately held entity. And that is absolutely one of the pillars of Samsung. Innovate, 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 be first, be the most creative, be the most effective, innovate, innovate, innovate. That is absolutely part of our DNA.
When you look at what you do, David, you're helping government agencies, state level, cities, perhaps federal, transform themselves. Clearly, Samsung is an agent of digitalization, of decentralization or distributed anything, right? Going from a mainframe to your mainframe, which is your phone now.
Yes, sir.
When you look at how that entire journey, and the fact that you guys are now responding to, everything is, come back to America, made in America, right? And you guys are, for the longest time since we did the fab in Austin in 2005 or whatever it was, now you're making a big investment back. But what would you say is the biggest opportunity in terms of taking Texas, for example, a very large state growing so fast, with so many agencies, with so many, in many ways, opportunities? What is the one thing that gets in the way? What's the biggest obstacle for selling more, for improving more, for innovating faster?
Well, that's a good question. The traditional buying cycles are just notoriously slow. Again, I primarily work in the public sector side of things, which is known to be notoriously slow, and that's real. That's a very real statement. So the opportunity for innovation is somewhat squelched, and arguably it doesn't matter if you're B2C or you're the White House and the federal government. Security is paramount. So you can't ever move faster than the sensible security allows for it. But the government sector could move quite a bit faster and quite a bit more aggressively in order to innovate. It seems to be a business choice. And I would certainly say in my years of experience, it's been I think it's safe to say that they have been slower adopters for my lifetime, and I'm a ripe 50, so it's been a minute, as they say.
Yeah, absolutely. So quick, go ahead, Johnny.
Let's bring it back to the our overall topic here in electricity and fusion and the sun. We have a comment. As the Internet of Things grow, especially handheld devices grow, they all need energy, right? And the Samsung battery has really improved. but we must plug it up to things at all the time. So we know that there will be billions of devices on the Internet of Things. People will be interacting. How is Samsung preparing the world of the future with 5G, the tripling of things that you must plug in for your device, which you must plug in to keep going? I mean, how are you looking at the relationship between your product and the reality of energy and electricity in connection with electric cars and those kind of things?
That's a very good question. And talk about disruptive technology. Energy storage, to me, is one of the next most critical elements that we will see that really allow for the electronic industry as a whole to take its next great leap. I am no expert in batteries, but the battery technology doesn't seem to have improved in any kind of a giant step forward since I've paid any attention to batteries in my lifetime. They obviously are always getting incrementally better, but there's yet to be, I guess nickel cadmium was the last sort of significant battery improvement, but I don't associate necessarily a month or a year worth of power sitting, we haven't had anything like that yet. And I do believe that's coming. That's not a statement of any kind of knowledge set, but I know there's a tremendous amount of money, of brain power, of focus on the mass quantity of storage of power, of electricity across the board, and going from EV, all the way across to a handheld phone. There is a dramatic push to make that significantly better and stronger. I don't think they can make the transistors much smaller anymore. So the only place to give now becomes the power storage, the power maintenance, the opportunity to run longer with whatever you have on board.
Okay.
No, I think this phone will eventually be this thin.
Yes, just a screen.
Yeah.
But isn't this?
Well, and it'll probably be pliable too, actually.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. You
I
can go
wanted-
like this.
I wanted to ask a question about that. When graphene first hit the market, another somewhat oversold scientific development,
Yes, sir.
nonetheless very interesting, very strong, very pliable, etc. It was suggested that you would have a whole big computer folded up in your pocket in the form of a sheet of paper, which would be a sheet of graphene. But this does introduce the interesting idea that growth, of course, is not necessarily exponential, that something quite different can be introduced. So that whereas we may think, this is a Samsung, by the way, do I get credit for that? I want the television under there at Samsung too. My wife, however, has let the side down. She's got an iPhone.
That's okay. That's okay. She seemed like a fine lady anyway.
That this is a kind of exponential thinking, smaller, lighter. Maybe there's another dimension that isn't seen, which has happened with so many things. For example, the newspaper industry never saw the dimension that we could see that the news would go to the net. That didn't bother us. What we didn't realize is our revenue would go to the net. All our money would be taken away. And it has been taken away. It took away all mine. When I was in the publishing business, it took away my viewers in the end, my readers in the end as well. The danger of exponential thinking, to see how many angels you can get on the pinhead, when in fact that might be the wrong thing to be. You're trying to do it all. So I think that's interesting. I also think it's very interesting how these companies come up, and we've had some mention here of BlackBerry, but Nokia. I spent quite a lot of time in Finland at the Nokia factory before it was a household word, when they were working with something, a precursor to something like Zoom, but where they were trying to eliminate excessive movement. So your lips would be moving, but your head would be wasn't very attractive. I would like to try it on some people I know, but I'm not going to mention their names here and now. But, we do get caught in this exponential, more of what we have, more of what we're improving. And maybe that's not the way to go. Sometimes you're up against a brick wall, as it were. For example, the automobile has not fundamentally changed in all its life. It still requires 4 wheels at the corner. Everything else is different, but the
Yes,
4
sir.
wheels at the corner are essential. Are there 4 wheels at the corner in telephony that are essential, or can those go away like newspapers?
Yes, sir. No, it's a great question. Obviously that screen and something to power it, and some way to either a dictation program solution, a keyboard solution, some way to actually communicate. They're all pretty prevalent. We haven't seen anything yet, a phone without a keyboard, because the AI of your audio codecs and the translations are good enough that you no longer need them. It isn't there yet, or at least not that I've seen. So I agree with you. We are not there. The phones are getting more powerful for sure, and I think in combination with the increased screen size, the part that isn't always stated is it also allows you to put a bigger battery in it. The capability, now you have these radios. You've got Wi-Fi radios, you got 5G radios, 4G radios, now some of the GPRS radios. Like, there are all these different things that are now getting stuck in some of these phones, and you have to have square footage to put them at some point. A combination of physics and square footage. Increase your screen, allows for a bigger battery, and allows you to put all these other bits and pieces into the thing to create a utility tool, or as close to a utility tool as possible. I think that's clearly that continues to be the roadmap. What can we add? Wearables is another one that has been jumping lately. There are a lot of medical applications to the wearables, to the watch environment, that are absolutely next generation disruptive technology. You start getting blood pressure, you start getting glucose levels, you start getting some really next generation tools into your watch, and all of a sudden the cuffs go away, and like all of these other things. You don't necessarily have the nurse that runs to your house twice a day or 3 times a day to come and check whatever level it may be they're coming to check. The watch will automatically beam it out, will program it out. You can set the thing to pull the data every minute, every 30 seconds, every 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is. It's programming at that point. It's data streaming and programming. There's all kinds of medical solutions that are being driven right now in the wearables that I think we'll see very soon some quite disruptive opportunities that are in front of us.
Couple of points that I wanted to make, and I'll go and look at the questions here in a moment, but I don't know that you all know that according to Samsung, and I'm reading from their website, Samsung currently uses 100% renewable energy. What is that? Samsung currently uses 100% renewable energy in the US, Europe, and China. All of Samsung US facilities use 100% renewable energy, like wind and solar. So Samsung is making a big impact also on being, sustainable and things like that. So real quick on, let's see. David, anything you can comment on Web 3.0 or decentralized applications or open source technology or quantum computing? Anything at all? I know you guys are working on all of it, but I don't know if there's anything you can talk about.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily privy to the inner workings. I see it once it kind of at least gets to the level of, okay, we think we have something here. Let's go run some potential customer opportunities. Let's go run some alphas, some betas, and some. So I don't necessarily see the sausage making that goes on. That a lot of that's done in Korea. I joined Samsung. Actually, this is interesting. I joined Samsung the first week of lockdown of COVID. So I was an employee. Well, I was a consultant to Samsung for 2.5 years. And at the end of 2.5 years, I had physically met 4 Samsung employees. Worked there 2.5 years. So at any rate, these last couple of years have made the kind of behind the scenes, the opportunity. At one point, Samsung employees used to all be required to fly back to, well, at some level, to fly back to Korea, to actually go and see Suwon and go see the infrastructure. That has not been the case, obviously, with COVID. So I have not been to corporate headquarters in South Korea. I would love to go at some point. That's where a lot of the sausage making actually occurs, and there are constantly questions, documents that come out in internal asking questions. What do you think about this? Where would you be a potential buyer at some price point for any and all kinds of opportunities? Samsung solutions have now driven into things such as steaming cabinets that go with your washer and dryers. I mean, there's all kinds of vacuums and robots, and there's all kinds of things that we've expanded into that sort of address these pillars of products that we have, and then we expand and sort of proliferate around them to create something, or potentially create something that may have new value, create new TAM to the company and to the target audiences, to the consumers.
David, the history
Yes,
of
sir.
conglomerates has not been very good in the US, and it has been much better in Asia, particularly with the Japanese trading companies. Samsung
I'm not familiar, sir.
is fairly close to being a conglomerate, and yet it seems not to be hurt by that. What we've seen in American conglomerates is one part of the company is up, another is down. We saw it with United Technologies, on and on, the great period of the 70s when everybody was buying everything until they couldn't manage what they had bought, and would jettisoning everything as fast as they could, because they made
Yes,
a
sir.
mess of it. And even the great successful conglomerate, General Electric, is now breaking itself into 3 separate entities, the conglomerated part. The chairman of once I asked the chairman of Dynamics, who was a friend of mine, about why they didn't build better light airplanes. They owned Cessna at the time. And then he told me they were selling Cessna. I said, why are you selling Cessna? And he said, because we can't manage it. We can think in terms of defense contracting. We don't know what doctors and lawyers who buy Cessnas want. I thought that was a cop-out, but apparently it was true. They didn't feel they had the corporate confidence to be a conglomerate. And yet Asian companies seem to deal with it with much more aplomb. What are your thoughts there?
So the business practice you're speaking of, I'm not familiar, so I can only speak in limited capacity here. But I would agree with you that Samsung has been quite successful in finding a product and creating significant market opportunity, and then recreating another product. Typically, they sit beside each other, so it's something akin to what they've already got success and got name brand and got history in. But Samsung has done a remarkable job. I mean, we're one of the largest, if not the largest, semiconductor manufacturer in the world at this point. Sure, that makes sense for our product portfolios of mobility devices, all the way across to the vacuums and the robots that run the vacuums and this, that, and the other. Samsung has been remarkable about building. I had heard, that was third hand, so I can't validate it definitively, that Samsung is the largest company in the world to own their own supply chain. So I could believe that. Our ability to manufacture, to figure out if there's a hole in a bucket somewhere, we'll go acquire it. And at that point, we now integrate it and then cross-integrate it across the portfolios to essentially maximize our opportunity. Samsung has been remarkable at their ability to continue to scale in new product segments, in new areas, in new sectors, to continue to grow and expand. It's been remarkable.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm shocked that none of you have a Galaxy Z Flip 4. How come you guys don't have the Flip 4? You don't like it?
Oh no, the flip
So it's-
phone. I think I have the next phone is the phone that he has, but I like the fold because then I have two screens, and when I close it, it's just as small as the phone I have now, and I can work between two screens.
Right.
And I think you can do that. with the
Dr.
fold.
Butler, I'm not high enough up the totem pole to get a fold. I dearly would love one, but I do not have that one. I'm jealous. That's a beautiful, beautiful piece of equipment.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I was expecting for you to ship me one after we finish.
I'll ship you the second one.
Yeah, no. So what happens is, that's what's interesting about phones. Some people use it for cameras. I use mine for work. Everything is
Yes,
on
sir.
there. Some
Yes,
people
sir.
use it for telephones. I use it for telephones also. But more importantly, my phone is a work phone. Every document is on it. I can sign. So I think it's just a matter of what you would like. But if you have not seen the fold, I mean, it's absolutely amazing. So
It's gorgeous.
we can have two screens at the same time. So I don't have one because it doesn't fit what I want to do. And I think that's
Yes,
for people who just want to have a phone. If they want a flip phone, that's fine. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah, the flip, interestingly enough, really they've both taken off dramatically for creating a new market segment. But we found the flip ended up being purchased by more of a consumer-oriented solution. And in many cases, it was women that have a purse. And ironically, the flip is the smaller of the two devices. So you'd think it would be the reverse, but there was a propensity of young and female that heavily purchased the flip. The fold, as you aptly stated, very much was designed, was pushed, was encouraged as a business device, business and or YouTube and sort of next gen, TV, video, whatever you want to call them, this multimedia thing. Those were sort of the two of the primary pillars around the fold. I think the fold's an absolutely fabulous product. Samsung has worked hard on those screens because the flip, the flip is folding, it's clamshell. So you have a seam that is open and closed however many times a day, 100 times a day. And you would think it wouldn't be very long before that would wear down. So Samsung spent a tremendous amount of money, time, effort, blood, sweat, and tears to try to harden that technology. And it is tremendously improved from version 1 to version 4, where we are now. And the same with the fold. The fold, you have the screen on the outside, and then you open it up and you have the big screen on the inside.
Right.
So you can do several different things with it. But here again, you've got a hinge where you've got a screen that's plastic glass combination of devices that is sitting there taking abuse constantly, which is very interesting.
Absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, one of the other cool things that I love about the vision with smart things and everything is that Samsung makes all this, appliances. They're all connected. You can program, and you can order the refrigerator, takes inventory, what's missing, places an order with Alexa or Amazon, whatever, your groceries get delivered. It's really quite fascinating, the possibilities of the Samsung lifestyle.
And it relates to how we live. There are a lot of entrepreneurial endeavors engaged. You could be playing golf and running your business with your Samsung phone. And there are so many opportunities around mobility, the mobility of things, from how you watch television to how do you go to games, how do you watch games, and those kind of things.
Yes,
so there are lots of things related to how you get a table at a favorite restaurant. It goes on and on. A lot of business.
Yes,
right.
Yep. No, absolutely accurate.
So David, real quick,
is continuing to increase.
In closing, David, I'm curious, we track a lot of things in the program, telecom, 5G, 6G coming, next versions of Wi-Fi, what have you, other Internet of Things technologies. We track smart buildings and Industry 4.0. We track smart cities. We track, smart energy and utilities, mobility, transportation. When you think about all the things that are driving thinking, innovation, making your customers want to buy more? What is the one trend that is driving everything? Is it smart cities? Is it, what is it? Is it something else? Is it Internet of Things? What is it?
Well, that's a good question. I think the answer to that is subject to the consumer that would be responding. So I think there's a different answer for B2B than there is from B2C, and there is for some of these other areas. The phones have gotten pretty good at sort of ubiquity of information. I mean, across the board, everyone's getting pretty close to that now. So that allows for it. I think the combination, one of the things we haven't really talked about, and it was, I was thinking about it, I guess somewhat was a power innovation, and that was the QPad. And there's the wireless charging. To me, that isn't just like killing it, just knocking it out of the park, but it is an incremental improvement. And you now have the capability of getting charge pads that are bigger, and you can begin to charge multiple things. To me, the crux of the continued drive forward of technology, of the handheld technology, is power and utilization of power. So to increase the time that you can use your device before you have to go stick it on the QPad and charge it, or go stick the cord in it and charge it. Now they've gotten good at, I think that phone, I can go 3 days on my phone without having to charge it again. And I believe this is a S22 Ultra. I believe that charges in 47 or 48 minutes from 0 to 100. So that's getting pretty good. But nonetheless, I've got an hour when this device is supposed to be my complete and total utility. Every third day that it sits there, like I can't do anything with it. It's got to charge. It's got to replenish. So I think the battery power, absorption, consumption, the utilization, I think is really the next big thing that allows for, I don't know if you all have seen, but you can actually stack depends on the device, but you can stack Samsung phones and one will charge the other phone. Like, now that's kind of cool. But here again, now you're tying up multiple phones that you don't have the utility of. So that was my issue with it. Like, well, that sounds neat, but we're defeating the purpose here. It's not, and now it's in nobody's hands or pocket or whatever. So anyway, I think the power distribution is really the next major hurdle for the consumer, for the business handheld powered device.
Oh, maybe Fusion on phones. Huh?
Well, we talked about Fusion at the very beginning. I find it fascinating. It is absolutely brand new. I'm still reading several articles about it. I agree it's a long way off. Captain Kirk and the Jetsons may be here before it's actually utilized in the household. But I have high aspirations for it. It creates all kinds of new opportunity. I think for the first time in, I don't even know how many decades they've been trying to. I think they've been trying to get Fusion working since the 40s, 50s, 60s.
Yep.
So we're coming up on 100 years.
Yeah. So David, real quick, and my last question: when you look at your next meetings, your next shows, I don't know if you go to the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas or what other events do you go to, but what's in it for you the next 90 days, the next 120 days?
Well, so from the B2B mobility standpoint, public sector standpoint, really it's about bring something useful to the table to the consumer. Don't tell me about the next latest, greatest phone, tablet, PC, Chromebook, whatever. We got things we're doing like that. I'm struggling. Fix a problem for me. I find it interesting that the consumer groups of every shape and size, B2B, B2C, et cetera, has not held the technology companies actually accountable for fix my problems. That if you're talking about schools, it may be school safety, it may be the transportation. My child is on a school bus, left the school and was on a bus, and heaven forbid didn't get off in the right place. Like, where the H is my child? Fix problems, make my world easier, better, quicker, faster, something. And ironically, it feels often like the tech world drives innovation to the consumer, but the reality should be the consumer is forcing the tech, forcing the solution to the technology and the technologist. And in my lifetime, I don't know that I've ever seen that. And I that has always been something I found interesting and confusing, and it doesn't make much sense.
I'd like to just say that I thought you were onto something very big with wireless charging. And
Yes, sir.
way beyond handheld. In South Korea, they were charging buses remotely by having a plate in the bus stop so that the battery could be lighter because there were many stops of the bus. And the real future of wireless charging is going to be with electric vehicles. When
Yes,
that
sir.
comes, there is a whole new world of electric vehicles.
Yes, sir. Andres and I sit on a technology council, and that's one of the big topics about putting technology in roadway so that you now have the ability, and it may be communications in the 5G world, it may be power storage, it may be any and all of these things that you're now enabling the vehicle to recharge, to communicate, to know where the other cars on the road are autonomously, any number of different scenarios. I agree with you. It's fascinating, the capability to have technology essentially have a recognition of presence of other technology around it is a remarkable thing.
Absolutely. Johnny, any final thoughts?
Well, I think that going forward, as Llewellyn said, the battery is going to be related to how the human being move around.
Yes, sir.
And that the telephones and the handheld devices will always be there, and they will go in our automobiles, outside of our automobiles like they do now. And I think also that they are solving some of the problems of the world, given the interconnection of things, and given the fact that everything has sensors on it. So I think that we're able to predict crime now in a lot of ways, where it's going to go. We're able to predict where the accidents will happen. So technology has served the consumers some, but you can always have a form where consumers would say, solve my problems. I like the idea about the kid in the school bus.
Yes,
So
sir.
congratulations, yes.
Thank you. Very interesting, David. Very interesting indeed. I learned a lot. Thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure to join you all. And
Absolutely. Thank you,
I'm going to
Dave.
start watching from now on. I love it.
Good. Well,
I
let's have John Butler take us away.
I guess telephones have changed. Operator, why don't you help me make this call? You see the number on the matchbook is old and faded. She's living in LA with my best old ex-friend Ray. Gosh, she said she knew well and sometimes hated. That's the way they say it goes. But let's forget all that.
Excellent, Johnny.
Lovely.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I see those.